Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Friday Fitcast. We are here for season 4, episode 8 with IFBB Pro legend, John the Tank Sherman. Man, this is going to be a good one. So welcome, John. How are you, man?
I'm good, Matt. How are you, sir?
Dude, doing great. Can't wait for this conversation. This was highly anticipated. And, as we look at the ticker, you're going to be able to see John and also ask him questions. You'll be able to make comments and go from there. But as you see on the bottom, John is not only a former professional bodybuilder, he is also a show promoter, has some of the most successful shows and longest running shows in the NPC and the IFBB Pro League. And, when you first started this, I was just a kid. So we go a little bit back. I remember seeing all of the muscular development mags that I had stacked, Muscle and Fitness, Ironman, anything I could get a hold of, because I was that scrawny little kid that wanted to find out, okay, how do we put on muscle? How do we look good for the girls? And how do we become one of those people who are respected, and sculpted their body in the way that they did? So how did you get your start in bodybuilding?
Oh man, it's a pretty unique story. When I was about 9 years old, my mother's hairdresser, her son was Mr. Texas in bodybuilding. His name was Rick Wilkins, and first time I saw him, man, I was like, "That's what I want to do." And he told me I would go to the salon with my mom, and he told me that when I turned 18 to find him, and he would teach me. So on my 18th birthday, I found him, and man, he put me so far ahead of the game as far as training, and I'm always indebted to him. And man, it's been a great ride.
Rick Wilkins goes that far back?
Yeah. Rick Wilkins was actually Mr. Texas light heavyweight, and that same year, Gary Stridham won the overall at Mr. Texas.
Okay, so I had no idea where this conversation was going to go, but Rick has helped out with Muscle Mania, and that's where I first met him. And I know he still trains in Houston. Holy cow. That just took me by surprise, because how you and I met was through Keith Klein. And what was great about it is I knew you were training. You had just, a stable of athletes that when I saw them and they're asking you questions while we were training, because I did a few sessions with you, and, I wanted to figure out what the really the secret and the key was. And you unlocked a lot of things for me. Of course, I'm not near as big as I need to be, but thank God for men's physique, by the way. I'm thinking about what you did early on. Were you just naturally, athletic in sports when you were in high school? Because when you were 18, you went to him. Where was the journey from this? How did it go from there?
I was pretty, man, I started actually hitting the gym in 10th grade. So that's 15, 16. Just kind of in the garage doing my thing. And then when I hooked up with Rick, he took me to a gym that he was actually the owner of, and man, it was unbelievable, all the things that he was able to teach me in such a short period of time, and we were able to put that everything he taught me to use. And then I won Teenage Texas my first year. And that was man, I was hooked after that. The bug had bitten me.
Wow. So 18, you go compete. You're on the circuit. How long does it take for you to earn your IFBB Pro card?
I turned pro at 24. So 6 years.
I may or may not have a picture, maybe a couple of stage shots. You have been known for probably having one of the best vacuums before vacuums were even talked about, and also probably one of the smallest tapered waistlines, like a true V-taper in bodybuilding. We don't see that very often. I want to touch on this because we'll get back to your career in a second. What is missing from these pictures to when you see Olympians now? Because I know you're an Olympian, you've been at the highest levels of this sport. What's changed with the waistlines? I'm curious, and why do they reward mass monsters instead of the classic lines like they used to?
Oh man, well, I think the guys now, it's just in my opinion, I mean, the guys are just so caught up on being as big as they can be and not so focused on symmetry and lines, just being as just a huge freak. But at the same time, you have the other categories that really emphasize the small waist, the wide shoulders, the good quads, and like classic physique. I mean, I love that category myself because if I were ever to be able to compete again, that's where I would fall.
Now, that makes a lot of sense. When you were competing, really all they had was bodybuilding. They didn't have men's physique. They didn't have classic. They didn't have all these other categories like bikini. How many people did you go against at 23 when you earned your IFBB pro card? What was the qualification to get you there? Because I know it's much different today than it is back then.
So when I started, we had levels. You were level 1, level 2, level 3. And level 3 was just, you're just getting started. You're just putting your feet in the water. Level 2 was maybe what was considered a regional qualifier. And then we had level 1, which was a national qualifier. So I had to, go through all the steps to become nationally qualified. And then I went to the USA, my first USA, and I got 3rd place in middleweight. That was an experience. I was just used to the local guys, but man, once you step on that national stage, it is another monster altogether. So after I got 3rd place, I had to go back and we had to get back in the lab and see where I could improve. And I think maybe a year, 2 years, 2 or 3 years later, I finally figured everything out.
So at that age, you're probably in the top 5% in the world, and then you move into the top 2%, and then you get into the top 1%. What changes? What minor changes or specific adjustments do you need to make sure your conditioning is on point, your symmetry, your muscularity, your proportion? What changes in the gym and diet? Did you have to make major adjustments to get to that top tier, or was it just, hey, I'm already on my way, I've got my good base, and now I just need to kind of make small changes, kind of navigate that just to get on course to get there? What's that like to get into that level?
To be honest with you, what you just said was exactly what happened. Is I already had a good base. I was already going in the right direction as far as my training and as far as my diet went. It was just a matter of my body maturing and just putting in the time in the gym and just banging it out. And once we figured that out, and I gave myself the time to grow. And actually, to be honest with you, I actually used to overtrain. I mean, and give you an example, we do 10 sets of squats. We do 10 sets of leg press. This was all in one workout. 10 sets of squat, 10 sets of leg press, 10 sets of leg extensions, and so on. And I actually picked up my first, I think it was Muscle and Fitness with Sean Ray in it. And I saw how these guys trained, and it was not like that. And before I was in the gym for like 4 or 5 hours a time. And then when I started watching these guys and reading more about it, I was like, man, I'm overtraining. That's why I'm not growing. So when I scaled back, it made the world of difference. And I got bigger, I got better. And I just love the sport even more because I was able to actually apply what I read that Sean Ray did or whatever any hot athlete was doing. I actually applied all that, and it was good information. I miss those magazines.
Yeah. We do too. And, you can't get them digitally anymore, and they really don't print the content that they used to print. And I just remember reading those workouts. And when you talk about 10 sets of that, 10 sets of this, and 10 sets of that, like most people are doing 12 to 15 sets total on that body part now. And,
Right.
Now you're allowing yourself to recover and grow. Angie said, one of my favorite promoters, by the way, that's, directed to you. And Mark Matthews tuned in as well. And he met you 20 years ago. Robert Duffy. Does that ring a bell?
That was my best friend in the entire world.
Oh,
That was my training partner for years.
These are all our great Facebook folks. And, we're live on Twitter right now. We're live on Facebook. We're live on even LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you're tuning in and you want to ask John a question, feel free. I see Tracy Teitelbaum from Phoenix, Arizona. Muscular Development. Yes, sir. That was the magazine to get. Now, I want to fast forward a little bit. Your pro debut. When you turned pro to your pro debut, how long did that take?
The very next year, and that was a disaster, man. A disaster. That first show, I believe it was a Pittsburgh Pro, and they had me. Well, I had just won the Nationals. I won overall at the Nationals that year, and the following year, I tried something different, and it backfired in my face. But the pressure was actually on me because they, when they advertised the show, they used my likeness and they used Porter Cottrell and kind of put us up against each other. And man, I hadn't actually seen any of these guys in person. But when I actually met them, man, I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing? These guys are unbelievable. But then after that show, I think I got 8th, my pro debut. And after that, man, I cried like a baby in the elevator back to my room. And I went back to work the next day, and because we had a show the following week. And the following week, I pulled everything together. I went back to what I was, the program that I was used to, and I actually ended up pulling out 2nd against all the same guys. So that's when I knew I belonged in the pro league.
Isn't it interesting how from one week to another, your body can change so much in a way to where improve it, or if people take their foot off the gas, because, we see a lot of people who do rebounds and they do a warm-up show or maybe a lead-up show, and then they'll do the next show and they'll look completely different in a week or two. And that's just because they make those small adjustments because they're already lean and in shape. So what did those guys say? Yeah, go ahead.
What I actually thought was going into that first pro show was I needed to be bigger. And so I tried to come in about 10 pounds heavier, and it blurred all my lines. And then I immediately remembered the second I walked off stage that Jim Mannion, who's the chairman of Ifbb, told me once I turned pro, he said, continue to doing what you're doing. Don't try to come in big like these guys. So the very next week, I pulled it back down, and I ended up getting 2nd place. And I've never tried to do the big game. It never worked for me.
And that's, oh man, you just opened up the can, right? When I think about somebody who tries to get bigger, and you hear about this all the time, you hear about it from your athletes, athletes all over the place are like, I need to put on 15 pounds. The first question that comes to my mind when people say they want to get bigger, mostly the guys, by the way, not the women, it doesn't really help them in most cases in their categories. The first question that comes to my mind is why? Because you actually look bigger when you look leaner and you look striated and you look conditioned. So what was the big epiphany for you? When Mannion said that to you, and I know that, bodybuilding is going in a certain direction at that point and it's trending. What did that mean to you to say, hey, I need just to keep doing this and little by little, as opposed to play the big game like Ronnie played or Jay played? Where did that really take your career?
Man, I was 5'5" and 185 pounds competing against these guys, man. I wasn't ever going to be, I couldn't imagine myself at 230, 240 on stage. That just wasn't me, man. I mean, because I still at the time, I was a better basketball player than I was a bodybuilder, believe it or not. So I always wanted to stay athletic. I never wanted to be, too big, too muscle bound or anything like that. I always wanted to be able to get out there and move if I needed to. And, me at that time, I was also a police officer. So, man, I had to be able to move, maneuver. If something happened, I needed to be able to not only take care of citizens, but take care of myself. And if I was just way too big, that wasn't going to happen.
So this leads me to a really interesting question. Phil Heath was also a basketball player in Colorado. You and Phil Heath 1v1. Who wins?
Phil Heath, because Phil Heath was a Division I basketball player, man. I was just a damn good player in high school. Much respect to Phil Heath, man. That's amazing. When I heard that, I was like, oh man, I actually thought I was like something special when it came to that until I saw Phil Heath was a Division I player.
Yeah. Well, let's compare you to another Olympian then, because Phil's an 8-time or 5-time Olympian, 5-time champion, Mr. O. Let's go to the 8-time Mr. O, Ronnie Coleman. Who's the better police officer, you or Ronnie?
Ronnie.
You got to give him props.
Give him props, man. Got to give him props. Ronnie was a better police officer than me. I think. I don't know. I mean, he was in Dallas and I was in Houston. So, but we were really good friends during that time. So, I don't know. I'll give it to Ronnie.
I got to say, if I got tackled by a 300-pound guy, I'm hurting. I personally would rather have you as a police officer if I'm running, because if I get tackled by a 5'5", 185, 200-pound guy, at least I'm not crushed, you know,
Absolutely.
and like suffocating. So
Absolutely.
that being said, Keith Beltran, welcome. I know that Keith was excited when you put him on the poster for the Muscle Beach this year. We're going to talk about your shows. I see John Pettigrew joining as well. You know, let's talk about bodybuilding in general. You know, where you come from to where bodybuilding is now. Is bodybuilding just this category? I'm specifically speaking of this division. Is open bodybuilding growing or dying, and why or why not?
If you had asked me this a couple of years ago, I would have probably said it's dying. But now they're going back to the symmetrical guys. Not only do you have to be crazy conditioned, but symmetry plays an important part again. So I have a lot of hope for bodybuilders going forward, because I know the bodybuilding numbers were kind of falling down, and everybody was like moving to classic physique because the guys were so big in bodybuilding. But now it's starting to turn around and even back out again. So, you know, I'm a bodybuilder at heart. I'm always going to be support the bodybuilding class, but these other, you know, I think, in my opinion, it's turning back around, and you're going to see bigger and better guys, more symmetrical guys doing great things.
Yeah. You know, not only are you a promoter, you're a former Ifbb pro, and you're also a head judge. So you really know how to call, look for the certain detail in bodies and physiques. And, you know, now that kind of maybe the Mr. O has loosened up a little bit, which, I mean, we don't have, you know, an Arnold coming in and winning 7 in a row. We don't have Phil coming in and winning how many, or even a Jay Cutler who maybe comes back and forth. How do you feel like that gives hope to maybe somebody like a Nick Walker or Reagan Grimes? And I know Nick is on top right now. You look at a Hottie, you know, Hunter Labrada. These guys all are in the mix, and they're talked about at any given year, whether it be at the Arnold, whether it be at, you know, the Olympia. And I'm curious, if you're an up and coming bodybuilder, do you feel like if you were in the prime of your life right now, that it does give you hope that it's just not going to automatically default to the winner before? What do you see?
Absolutely. Because, I mean, it's disheartening to go to a show knowing who the winner is going to be. You know, you give it your all, and, you know, and no disrespect to the winners. I mean, the guys have been repeating, no disrespect, but it's you always want to go to a show of that nature, feeling like you have a chance. You know, hey, if I go to this show, they're going to give me a fair look. I got an opportunity to move up, instead of, you know, the same guy winning over and over, which is not a bad thing. I think it's great. These guys are killing themselves to win that show over and over and over. But right now, I think it's wide open. You know, you got Derek winning, and you had Hottie. It was a close match, and then you had Samson. So, man, that was a very exciting Olympia to watch. And I think going forward, you're going to see a lot more guys have the opportunity to be number one on that show.
Now we switch to classic. C-Bum's been up at the top. You know, he's not necessarily untouchable, but he's had some good competition. And yet it still seems like his aesthetics, even though you've seen him from 4 years ago to what he looked like then on stage to what he looks like now, that seems to be the going look for classic. Now, do you really see classic kind of, and, you know, they had the 212s, they had the 202s. They were trying to find different ways to get bodybuilders engaged to really fit their look, because not everybody's an open bodybuilder. Like you said, you would have been in classic and probably would have absolutely destroyed anybody in classic because you had the lines. And I want to go back to that picture really quickly, because, I mean, a lot of this, it doesn't do justice for photography. I know Mark Matthews is a photographer, but when I look and see something like this, I look and see your quad sweep. We're looking at your V taper and how your lats are able just to pull out, and it almost like your waist disappears into your trunks. Right. So let's say C-Bum has another reign of a year or two. Who do you see on the scene that might be given a run for the money for the title here in a few years, if not next?
I don't know that guy's name that got second, but that guy's phenomenal. That guy's phenomenal. There's a lot of great classic physique guys out there, man. I mean, that class is very impressive, and yeah, when C-Bum steps away, that class is going to be in good hands. Very competitive.
And we found that was wildly popular, you know, bringing back kind of the Arnold look, the black classic trunks, you know, with the 2-inch waist is different from like a French cut. I know we're getting a little technical here, but it really just seems like more attainable classic look than just going crazy and trying to put on 50, 60, 70 pounds on a frame to fully fill out and get there. So you also have in your shows, because we'll talk about your shows, you have the Houston Tournament of Champions coming up, and you carry pro classes. I know that you have certain sanctions, and I remember this picture. I've been to a few of your shows. You're one of the first shows I've ever been to it, and just to watch an NPC or an IFBB Pro League type show. What was the feeling when you see this many physique athletes? What year was this, and how did you feel seeing all these guys just crammed on stage?
So this was our first Houston Tournament of Champions, and that was a men's physique class. And I believe that was 30 guys. 30 guys showed up. 30 pro guys showed up for that show. Man, that was a phenomenal feeling because I had never put on a pro event before, and so it was very successful, very competitive. You saw some of the bigger names that came out, and man, it was a great feeling. So every year we've changed the categories. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works. But yeah, we had the men's physique, we've had wellness, we've had classic physique, and this year we're going to have wellness again.
Very cool. You had wellness last year, which I say last year because it's 2023, and you have an Olympia qualification now for both shows. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our show has always been an Olympia qualifier. I'm pretty sure most of the pro shows are Olympia qualifiers. So so we're hoping to attract a lot of athletes, pro athletes for the show, so they can qualify for Olympia, so they can train all year and do well on stage at that Olympia.
Yeah. March 30th is coming up. So we have a lot of athletes who are watching. I see Trey's on, David's on. We have 19 different platforms that we're looking through. So that's why I keep scanning through all the computers and the screens to see who's here. What makes the Tournament of Champions different? Because here's what happens. A brand new athlete or a seasoned athlete is going to start making plans. And usually they back it out for 4 months or so, because it's usually a 12 to 16 or 20 week prep, depending on how much time they need to get ready. So we're in that 12-week mark period. And it's the first show up. And this is usually what really attracts people to want to do a first show up, because they're like, okay, you know what? Maybe I can get my qualification early in the year, or maybe I can qualify for nationals. What would you say really the advantages to be able to hopping in early as opposed to an October show or a July show?
I think the advantage is just qualifying early so you can relax the rest of the year. You can just train, and you can be fresh for a national qualifier or an Olympia. I think personally, I mean, I used to do the shows back to back. Sometimes, you know, with good coaching, you get better and better. And sometimes your body just gets so tired that it shuts down. So I think it's better if you try to qualify early and knock it out, rest, go back and look at what you need to improve on. So when you do get on that big stage, you're ready to go.
Yeah. I want to go back to your career. You get your pro card, you take 8th, you come back, you win 2nd. I know I love doing this back and forth thing to keep you on your toes. How was your career after those first 2 shows? Were you continuing to improve? Did you backslide a few? What did you learn and experience in like your first 2 or 3 years of being a professional? And how did you have to adapt your game?
So just like I was saying earlier, I did the shows, man. I really had no guidance. So when the schedule came out, I pretty much signed up for all the shows, you know. And I did well early on in the year, but as the year progressed and we got closer to the Olympia, I was worn out. So my placing showed that. So I probably got, I think at the best, 13th at the Olympia. but that's nothing to shake your head at, because that's 13th best in the world. So yeah, that's why I encourage people to try to knock your shows out early and stop competing so much closer to the shows, because by the time you get to the show that you really want to do, if you've been doing a lot of competing, man, your body, there's a possibility it's going to shut down and is not perform the way you want it to.
There's a lot of talk that, you know, most of the top level pros now maybe do one show or even two shows at best. You know, if they're going to just prepare, somebody like a Brandon Curry, who's like, man, I'm going to train overseas and in the Middle East, and I'm just going to come in and do the O. How many shows were you doing a year roughly when you were a pro?
Six shows a year. I was like a bikini girl, man. I was doing show after show after show, and you know, Keith Klein was my nutritionist, and we were nailing it, man. But it's like I said, at the closer to the end of the year, by the time I got to the Olympia, oh, bro, I was doing everything I could to just hold it together and not embarrass myself on stage. And to be honest, I there were Olympias that I went to where I again tried something new, which was not the place to do it, and it didn't work. But you know, I was just proud to say I was on that stage. You know, not many people could say that.
So let's talk about who you looked up to, who you were good friends with at that Olympia or on those Olympia type stages. There's a slew, and I think really, if you look at the pinnacle of bodybuilding, you had that era to where you had some of the biggest names in the world, and you still talk to those folks. So who were some of the pros that you really looked up to and really became good friends with while your Olympia tenure and your Olympia run was going on?
Of course, Ronnie Coleman, because he was just down the street, man. And JJ Marsh. JJ Marsh was very influential in helping me out. A guy named Steve Brisbois from Canada, he guided me a lot. You had I'm trying to think. Lee Labrada was my inspiration. We really didn't talk much, but whenever he did speak, it was like I'm listening. Whatever he said, because that dude was the most consistent athlete and the most business-like athlete that known to me. So yeah, it's just a few guys. Ron Love, you know, from back in the day, and another good friend of mine, John Simmons from Detroit. That's another one of my best friends. So, and we're still pretty close to this day.
I find it very ironic and interesting. You have the first show out of the gates in Houston. And yes, Lee Labrada was the bomb mark. And, you know, John Sherman was right there as well. Now Lee has the summer show, right? He has the Labrada Classic, which is also in Houston. Sometimes you share the same venue, and then you've got your Muscle Beach Classic in October. So last time I checked, when we went to the Labrada, did you had judged the Labrada in 2023?
Yes, I did.
So how is it to be like not co-promoters, but you're promoters, but you also judge his show? You've competed with him professionally and you've been on the same stage. So how has that relationship developed? And now he has Labrada Nutrition. You get a chance to be a part of his show. And he's also a part. I see Labrada Nutrition at every single John Sherman production event. So
absolutely, man.
How did that work? Yeah, go ahead.
Lee is an amazing human being. He supported all my shows. I used to put on shows back in the 90s. So 95 was my first first NPC show that I put on. And Lee always was very positive, very supportive. He always sponsored my events, and you know, I have done all I can to help his events become successful as well, as of today. So, you know, whatever he needs, all he has to do is ask, and whatever I need, all I have to do is ask.
Yeah. You recently had a back surgery and a back injury, and I'm curious, as we go down this road, I know that, you know, if Lee says, hey, I need your help, you were there. You were able to power through that entire show, which, you know, I was there for about 4 hours of it. And, you know, you got off the table, and I remember seeing you, but dude, you stuck it out. Not one complaint. How was that going through sitting down that long? Because that was a big show, just like your shows are really big. How did that affect, your physical ability to be able to push through? Because y'all did excellent. I watched the judging, and I used to be a judge for another organization, and I was watching, and I'm like, dude, they got first call outs. They're nailing it. And even everybody I was around, because we bounce around and talk to different coaches and audience members, and they're like, the judging is really good. How important is judging at your show? How did you feel after Labrada's show getting off that table?
Oh man, so I had surgery in February, actually the 27th of February. I had fusion on my L4, L5, and my S1. So I was in a lot of pain. I mean, a lot of pain for the prejudging. But for some reason, I don't know, just, thank God that pain went away and I was able to, do the finals. And after the show was over, I got up and walked around and I was like, wait a minute, I feel pretty good. Now the next day wasn't so good, but I was just, I'm the type of guy, if I make a commitment, you can count that it's gonna get done. So I would never, especially when it comes to league shows, I'm not gonna, start them and not finish them. And as far as judging goes, I always want to make sure that the athletes are treated with respect and they're judged fairly. And that's important because I was an athlete, and that's, you want to treat people the way you want to be treated, and that's what's important to me, is making sure we get it right every time, every single time, no excuses.
I'm laughing at some of these comments, John. I promise it's not you, man. We got Grant Cardone watching, and he's a friend. So when you get big influencers and celebrities watching you, you're doing the right things. Plus, when you get to interview a celebrity and a legend, that also helps. So, David Rodriguez has done your show. I think that was back in 2019. I remember him being a bodybuilder at your show. I've been to, I think, every Muscle Beach since 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And, somebody like a Harvey Franks, somebody like a Thorin Lewis. I know Harvey is someone who's always supported you with tremendous athletes. Want to talk about Thorin Lewis for a second. The last NPC show that he won was your show. Mm-hmm. And then he goes to nationals and gets his pro card. He's been on your stage multiple times. He's got great muscle bellies, always comes in condition. How is that like to see him win that pro card? Because I know he's been chasing it for a few years.
Man, it's amazing to watch Thorin's growth. Couple, 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago when he first started, he would say, I'm going to turn pro. And I'm like, yeah, dude, okay. I hear this all the time, but he's been consistent, and I've also had to, scale it back and look at if he really loves the sport, in which he does. And those people that really love the sport always do well. They do whatever it takes to do better and better and better and improve every year. And as far as Harvey goes, Harvey is phenomenal, man. 61 years old, getting 5th place at the Nationals against these kids. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Harvey Franks.
We're not done with Harvey yet. Harvey had a very special moment. I'm surprised he didn't start crying on stage, on your stage. I remember this because I'm sitting kind of in VIP and I'm looking, and he gets on, he does his routine, and then his son gets on and does his routine, and they get to be together, father and son, going against each other in comparisons and lineups. That was a moment that was probably, when I looked at, by the way, when I go to your shows, I was looking for a seat and couldn't find a seat. So I'm thinking, man, where do I sit? Well, I'm just going to stand because, dude, you had that place packed, and that's a big place. The Humble Civic Center is not a small venue.
Right.
Did you get a chance to talk to Harvey after that and what that meant to him? Because I know that he blasted that on social media. That might have been the proudest moment of his life on a bodybuilding stage, because I talked to him and he said, dude, that was the best feeling I ever had. How do you create moments like that?
Man, that was a very special moment. That really touched me because I know his son very well, and I know the love that his son has for the sport. I know the love that Harvey has for the sport, and I know the love they have for each other. So for them to share that on stage, on my stage, was a phenomenal moment, man. I'm so grateful that they did that. It's a fulfilling feeling to when things like that happen. When we see people propose to a spouse on the stage or something like that, it's a fulfilling feeling, man. So I love promoting the shows. I love bodybuilding. I mean, I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this.
I don't either. And Crypto Bill says John Sherman is a legend. Great show. Yeah, I agree, Crypto Bill. I know you're like, where do they get these names? These are all on Twitter and X, by the way. So I'm looking at all these coming through, and it's insane. I want to talk about this because we go through and we don't really understand. Some of you have never been to a show, and I have to say it's more fun to actually watch or consume a show rather than run around behind the scenes. I've never seen John sweat during his shows. He's always there. He's taking pictures with his vendors. He's able to talk, when he can talk, and he's got people in place. Like, you run this like a machine. You've been doing it since the mid 90s. Yeah. This to me was something that I really enjoyed seeing, is when you had all your overall winners come in and just do, just a fun pose. So why do you have, and I think this might be a question where it's a pretty leading question. You have so many people return to stage. I see David Lovelace every year wants to do your show. Harvey brings a team, right? Austin finally competes. And bodybuilding is not easy just to do every single show every single year, because you have to give your body a break, like you talked about. Your shows have grown. Why do you think more athletes want to do your shows now? Because I'm seeing the numbers shoot through the roof. What's your secret sauce?
Honestly, man, I just, when I competed, I know how the athletes want to be treated. That's pretty much it. I know how the athletes, what the athlete expect, because I was an athlete, and I know how to treat them. I know, all the nuances of what an athlete expects, what they need. So I make sure that they have all that. And again, our NPC staff, they're phenomenal. So when the show starts, I just have to sit back, because I've worked with these guys, the NPC staff, for umpteenth years, and I never have to worry. They're professional. They know what to do. So I know that the judging is going to be on point. I know the expediting is going to be on point. All I have to do is provide the venue and everything they need for it to be a successful event.
Well, now we're going to get into something controversial. Harvey, I see Harvey and Austin are both watching. I had no idea they were here.
Yeah.
You do a lot of posing clinics. You do a lot of shows. And one thing that you said that really stuck out to one of your competitors, Lorenzo Brown, he goes, John Sherman told me, don't be in a hurry to go pro. Why is that so important? Why do people want to be pro so bad and skip over the best times of their life when they can compete as an amateur? What happens when someone turns pro? Because that's a whole nother league. Like, you go from like a puddle left over from like a, just a light rain into the Pacific Ocean. And now you're swimming with sharks once you're a pro. And these guys have been doing it for a while, and there's a lot of pros. I think there's close to, if I'm not mistaken, 11 or 12,000 IFBB pros. And these guys have made it to the top of the food chain after some of them have spent 5, 6, 7 years just getting to the pro level, and they continue to trend in their journey. So what would you say to an amateur athlete that, is nationally qualified? Maybe they don't quite hit it. They're not dialed in enough, and they might not be pro quality yet. Why would you say it's important to enjoy your amateur years? And what are some different avenues that amateurs can take, even if they don't turn pro, to help monetize? Because we know sponsorships are dead. What would you say to a new athlete, or maybe a seasoned athlete who is chasing that pro card?
Well, the reason I think that some athletes should actually wait before they get on the pro stage is because it actually depends on how competitive was their class when they turned pro. Because when you actually get on the pro stage, everybody is competitive. Everybody is good. And it's all a matter of if one person was on that day and the other person was off. So I personally would say to a lot of guys, man, enjoy that high that you got from winning as an amateur, as a top amateur. Enjoy that high, and then go back and reassess your physique, see where you need to improve, see what you need to do to maybe improve conditioning. Maybe you need more size, or maybe you're ready to go. But man, don't be in a rush, because you went from that high and now you're going to come and compete against seasoned pros, and now you're going to go back to the low, unless you're very fortunate, you know, to be one of the top guys right out of the gate. But that's a hell of a drop, and it's like an elevator ride. It's just, man, it's a terrible feeling, and that's why I know, because when I did my pro debut and I got 8th place, I know how terrible I felt. I felt like I didn't belong. And so I was fortunate enough to pull it together for the next show. But man, everybody's not that fortunate. Everybody's not ready to get on a pro stage. Even though you got a pro card, it's a whole different beast, man. It's a whole different beast. So I would encourage, you know, the guys to if you're doing this for the money, you don't necessarily have to. It's only a few guys in pro bodybuilding, or even the pro league, that make money, can make a living from bodybuilding. I was fortunate enough to be one of them, but there's not many guys that do that. So I would say, you know, hook up with some of these supplement companies. Maybe, you know, maybe they still, you know, want to do some sponsorships, or just market yourself, because now with social media being out, anybody can be famous. You know, you just got to put yourself out there. So I mean, if look at Instagram, look at Facebook, look at all the people that aren't competitors, that are doing well. They just, you know, just in shape, and they're marketing themselves. So yeah, I wouldn't drop all my eggs in that basket. I would be more I would do different things, as far as putting my feelers out for different avenues to make money, as far as that goes.
Yeah. So this is what Nina said. It's like the first day at school when everyone else has been there for a few years before. That's the best analogy I've heard in a while. And she's on X right now, or Twitter. And, you know, when you talked about having your sponsorships, did that really get you through, or were you kind of cashing out on some of the wins? Because I know you had a great career. And, you know, somebody like Branch, if we talk about him, he had contracts in place. You know, Jay Cutler had Muscle Tech. What did John Sherman have that kept pushing him through to that level, to where he was fortunate enough to where you were be able to make a living in this sport?
So when I turned pro, I got a Weeder contract right off the gate, and it wasn't much money, but I still had my job, so it was enough to make a difference. And then I was fortunate enough to get a Muscle Tech contract. I had another contract, I forgot who it was with, but yeah, I was one of the fortunate ones. Now, you know, the guys today, they don't, you know, unless you're one of the top guys coming out of the gate, you're not getting that opportunity. So you know, you gotta be able to put your feet in different ponds to make a living when it comes to this sport. And I always kept it as I always wonder if I would have looked at the sport as more of a career than a hobby, because I've always kept it as a hobby. And I always wondered how it would have turned out if I had to just, you know, really put all my eggs in one basket. But, you know, that's something you'll never know.
Yeah. Well, you're an extremely successful personal trainer. You've got some of the best shows in the biggest and most respected league in the world. And I think, you know, you are at the top of the food chain, and you've proven yourself, because if I can think about, you know, how long 1995 was, that's when I graduated from high school. You know, we're talking about 28 years of solid promotion and production value that people continue to come back to. So going into the future, 2024, 2025, what does that look like for you? What are you excited about?
Man, hopefully, I'll get an opportunity to do more shows, more events. Not just the 2 that I have, but hopefully we can do more events, not necessarily in Texas, maybe somewhere else. And I hope to possibly open other facilities. I have a training studio, Fit to Live training studio, so we hope to open 1 or 2 more of those in the near future. But man, I'm just fortunate to be alive. I don't know if you know, people out there know, but I'm a rectal cancer survivor, and that I was diagnosed 4 years ago. So, man, every day is a blessing for me. So I don't take anything for granted. but I also live one day at a time. So I don't want to look too far ahead. I do make plans, but I don't want to look too far ahead. I like to live in the moment.
And we did not really touch on your cancer. I didn't know if you did want to bring that up. What was the biggest lesson that you learned from there? I know that you were extremely grateful and humble, and I know that was an issue that was a big scare for a lot of the bodybuilding world. Everybody was asking, "Hey, how is John doing? What can we do to support?" Is that still in remission, and you're still moving forward from that? I mean, what have you really learned from that whole experience?
Oh man, yeah, it's still in remission. This is going to be my 4th year. Man, what I learned, honestly, was you never know. Because I was healthy, I was eating right, I work out. You know, I'll be the last person you would think that would, you know, get diagnosed with cancer. So it can hit anybody. So all I can say is, you know, the best advice I can give people, man, is go get checked. First of all, go if you're 45 years or older and you're male, go get checked, man, because you never know what's going on. Don't be afraid to find out. And because I waited, I waited several years before I went and got checked, and lo and behold, they found something. So, and I I couldn't believe it because I just know, hey, I work out every day, man. I eat right, you know, I do this. So yeah, it can happen to anybody. But yeah, I've just learned from that experience that friends and family are the most important things you got, and just enjoy your time with them. Enjoy the moment. Don't treat people bad. Treat people with respect, and you know, just live a good life. Be a good person.
We appreciate this, and you know, I think about the events that you have coming up, and obviously our crew is in full support of what you're doing. What are the dates and the place for your productions, both of your events this year?
Okay. So the Houston Tournament of Champions, which is a IFBB and an NPC event, that's going to be March 30th, and that's held at the Woodlands Waterway Marriott in Woodlands, Texas. And if we have Muscle Beach, we haven't determined where we're going to have that yet. More than likely, we'll have it at Humble Civic Center, but we'll see. But that's a long way to go, and that's in October. So yeah, if you guys want to get signed up for the show, registration. Hey, and as far as sponsors go, if you want to get early bird sponsor discounts, go to HoustonTournamentOfChampions.com. And if you have any questions, you guys can hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, whatever.
And I'm looking at the ticker. So the best one, John the Tank Sherman on Instagram, Houston_Tournament of Champions, NPC_Muscle Beach Classic. And I did have the website as musclebeachclassic.com. Is that one that can also go to that same site?
Yes, sir. You can go to musclebeachclassic.com, HoustonTournamentOfChampions.com, or JohnTheTankSherman.com.
Well, Frank White, who's in, I think, Illinois now, he says, great to see you, John. And
hey,
I have to say, it's really cool to be able to kind of bring the community back together and see your success and see you flourish. And especially, you know, the moments that you get to create for not only athletes, but also the audience. I mean, people who get introduced to fitness and health and wellness in this sport, you never know where it's going to take you. And I would just say you do a great, sorry, Wisconsin, my bad, Frank. All right, I'll get you there next time. I knew it was somewhere up there. It's an I or a W state, somewhere where it snows and it doesn't snow down here.
Yeah.
But no, we appreciate the time. We appreciate this, and you know, I know that there's great things to come, and really honored to have you here and really just speak about your journey, your experiences, and what you have in store for the future. So, just wanted to thank you, John.
Matt, thank you for having me, man. You're a great guy, and I support whatever you do. And again, it's been an honor to be here.
Dude. And until then, for those of you who are just catching the replay, if you just tuned in, I saw a bunch of people just come in. You can hit the replay, and it's going to be on X or Twitter. It's going to be on Facebook. It's going to be on YouTube at the Storm Classic International or Matt.StormTX, which I think we just changed that name. But give John a follow. If you have questions, you have inquiries, you're a sponsor, if you're a company and you want to get your name out, that's the place to do it, and he knows how to do it. So we will see y'all. Season 4, episode 9 is coming up next Friday. Can't wait to get here. But John, thank you so much. And for those of you, have a great weekend.
Bye, guys.